The chapter begins with several warriors sitting and resting as the ground shakes. Choi Hyun-sung notices the disturbance and Enimugi approaches their base at a fast speed. The kill squad prepares for combat, and Hyun-sung says it is the first legendary rank monster to appear in the world. The squad resists its fear skill as they prepare to attack, and Hyun-sung attacks as he says he only awakened a year ago and is a level 1 player. In the past, Hyun-sung was a laborer and was a college student until his dad developed mana reflux syndrome. The illness popped up 19 years ago after a dimensional gate opened, unlocking hidden potentials in humans. Monsters use the gate to come from another world, but the humans use their powers to resolve the problem. The medicine required to cure Hyun-sung's dad was extremely expensive, so he and his family were forced to do extra work. He wishes to become a player as he lies on his bed and says the chances are slim. Hyun-sung goes to take a shower but suddenly awakens as a player, and he checks his status window. He is shocked as he sees that his stats are low and says he will have to level up 6 or 7 times to have stats that are the same as a level 1 player. He talks about a buff user called Kim Hana and says she is one of the few buffers in the world. He sees that he can buy and sell items using the system and realizes he has 2 billion points. He realizes that a normal rank user cannot buy certain items, and the system informs him that he needs 10 billion points. Hyun-sung goes through the shop and sees medicine that can raise strength. He purchases the medicine, consumes it, and it makes him stronger. He purchased several items from the shop and begins building his foundation. Hyun-sung goes to an office building the following day and tells the receptionist he wants to register as a player because he has awakened. The woman refers to him as Sir and asks if he is truly awakened. She says that no one his age has awakened and that the oldest person to awaken was 58 years old. Hyun-sung then sees his reflection and sees that he is old. A man calls Hyun-sung his elder and asks if he is alright. Hyun-sung checks his status window and sees that his points are his life expectancy. He returns home and sees that his life expectancy is a year and a half. Hyun-sung decides to sell his items and is surprised because he can put his old game for sale. The item is successfully registered and Hyun-sung decides to add another item. Meanwhile, a demon named Gaspit goes through her status window and laments that she has purchased all the items. She is notified that a new rank item has been registered and rushes to check it. Hyun-sung's life expectancy increases as he gains more points and looks younger. A woman in a strange world purchases some of his items and attempts to use them but is confused. She then takes a selfie with the camera after seeing the filters. Gaspit gets furious because she can't buy all the items and wonders what she can use the others for. The game console turns on and Gaspit doesn't sense any magic from it. She decides to play the game but loses and screams in anger. Hyun-sung moves around that night and tries to put a car for sale, but the system says he can only upload items that belong to him. He returns to his house and checks on the products he has put for sale. Hyun-sung wakes up the following morning and sees that someone complained about his product, but he then sees that an item has been sold. The system then informs him that there are complaints on 70% of the items he has sold and his business is suspended for 3 days. Hyun-sung sees the complaints and says he will lose his business if he can't settle them in a week. He says the customers should be players like him and they don't seem to be from Earth. He decides to buy electronic products to sell to them but realizes he is out of money. He picks up his phone that night and leaves the house as he gets an idea. Hyun-sung works on a construction site and his co-workers commend him for his hard work. They ask him where he has worked and he says he has worked in several places. 3 days pass and Hyun-sung's business suspension ends. He receives another complaint from Gaspit and sees that all the items he has sold have complaints. He receives another 3-day suspension and the system says he will be suspended for 3 months if he doesn't resolve the issues. Hyun-sung goes through the complaints and Gaspit sends numerous complaints simultaneously. He gets frustrated but says he can't let his business get suspended for 3 months. Hyun-sung continues his work and the 3 days pass. He purchases items that will help resolve the complaints and the suspension ends. His new items get sold and all his complaints are resolved. Hyun-sung gets more points and regains his young form. He thinks of what he should start selling next but decides to do his player registration. Hyun-sung takes the mandatory 3 weeks course at the Player Academy and says they reteach students who fail until they pass. He passes his test, but a student looks down on him because he uses a normal rank skill. 3 weeks pass and the group invites Hyun-sung to celebrate with him, but he turns them down. He returns to the player building and they give him his card. He then goes to an equipment store and rents equipment, and the man informs him that he will be charged if he exceeds the rent period. He then goes to the Horned Rabbit dungeon and says he can join any party with his stats, but he chooses not to. A man asks Hyun-sung where his party is as he walks to the dungeon, and he walks in alone. He says they must think he is reckless, and he says life isn't a game because monsters are dangerous. Hyun-sung moves through the dungeon and sees some players fighting a horned rabbit. He realizes the rabbits are giants and watches as the party kills one. He sees that the party is struggling because they are normal players with other jobs and says he looked down on the dungeon because it was the lowest rank. A player stabs a horned rabbit and kills it. Hyun-sung realizes they took about 8 minutes to kill the horned rabbit and says it takes a while. He sees the safety officer and realizes they don't care unless the party is about to be wiped out. He realizes that his stats are good enough for solo play and uses a skill called Stealth to move around unnoticed. Deep within the Horned Rabbit dungeon, Kim Jisoo and Unni of the Siwoo Guild walk around with their team, and Unni commends the team for their hard work. Jisoo tells Unni to cheer up and says the monster they are searching for will appear soon. They decide to capture the beast alive as they are on duty, and they say their skills will be more than enough. Unni says they have a problem because the monster isn't appearing and says it's been 15 days since they began their search. The 4th class advancement condition is the Horned Rabbit Chief, but it doesn't appear. The Siwoo Guild continues walking, but they suddenly see Hyun-sung as he walks by and realizes he entered the dungeon alone. They wondered if he has lost his party members, but see that he isn't bruised and is using the stealth skill. They see that his equipment is rented and realizes he is a rookie. Unni says he needs to be 35 levels above a monster before he can kill it with a single strike, and she is shocked as Hyun-sung kills the horned rabbit with one attack. Hyun-sung laments as he has hunted several monsters but hasn't found a single item. He uses his stealth to sneak up on the monsters and kill them. Unni remembers the law of 20 levels and says a player won't receive experience from a monster that is 20 levels weaker than he is. They wonder who Hyun-sung is as they watch him and decide to continue watching him hunt. Hyun-sung receives an item from a monster but sees that his level isn't increasing. He decides to continue hunting for an hour, but 5 hours pass and his level remains the same. He wonders what is wrong, as it usually takes a day or two to level up. Jisoo says the atmosphere has changed. Hyun-sung sits on the floor and says he earned 100 million points from selling electronics, but only earns 100 points from a monster. He decides to be optimistic and kills the monster that tries to sneak up on him. Hyun-sung stands up and kills all the monsters that are around him. He then kills the attacking monsters and receives a notification that he has gotten an unbelievable achievement for killing 300 horned rabbits by himself. He receives a title and is called the Horned Rabbit Hunter. Hyun-sung sees the reward and realizes other people can't get it because they level up before killing 300 horned rabbits. Unni suddenly laughs and says she has finally caught a big fish and it has been a while. She sees as he cuts the windpipe of a horned rabbit and realizes it isn't luck. She watches as he kills the horned rabbit surrounding him with one stroke and says she must bring him in. Hyun-sung wonders if he should go deeper into the dungeon, but is startled as Unni and Jisoo get his attention. He sees their high-class equipment and wonders who they are. Jisoo tells Hyun-sung not to be on guard and says they are safety officers. She says he couldn't sense their presence because they were using a hiding type of skill, and Hyun-sung says he couldn't even hear them breathing. She says his skill is too good for hunting horned rabbits and asks what level he is on. He realizes his level and stats are odd and decides not to tell them his level. Unni says she can help him get to the Siwoo Guild, and Hyun-sung says nothing good will come if they find out about his strange stats. Hyun-sung says he isn't interested in joining a guild and doesn't like being affiliated with anything. He also says he doesn't plan to join a guild and asks them to move aside. Unni gives him their card and asks him to call if he changes his mind. They decide to leave the dungeon and Hyun-sung leaves first. He enters a taxi and asks the taxi to drive away from their current location. Hyun-sung asks the driver to take him to the Blood Fox dungeon. The driver congratulates him for graduating from horned rabbit monsters, and Hyun-sung thanks him. He talks about how he transports several players and knows the routes. Hyun-sung ignores what he says and stares at his status window as he wonders if receiving titles in other dungeons is possible. Hyun-sung arrives at the Blood Fox dungeon and sees several parties recruiting members. He says the atmosphere is similar as he walks to the entrance, and the man asks him where his party members are. Hyun-sung says he is alone, and he enters the dungeon. A blood fox attacks the party, and Hyun-sung watches as they fight it. He sees that the safety officers are asleep and activates his stealth. He arrives at the lowest floor and begins to kill the blood foxes that attack him. He sees that he gets 108 points from each fox he kills and continues killing. Hyun-sung moves further into the dungeon and finds more blood foxes. The group of foxes stares at him and he prepares to fight them as he says he will start hunting seriously. 2 hours pass and Hyun-sung kills 300 blood foxes. He receives a notification and gets the title of Blood Fox Hunter. He opens his status window and sees that his strength has increased. Each title increases a different stat and more blood foxes emerge. He begins his second experiment as he prepares to attack the foxes. 7 hours pass and Hyun-sung successfully kills 1,000 blood foxes. He receives the title of Blood Fox Predator and his rank increases. He sees that he can go above a rare rank and attain a heroic rank. Hyun-sung decides to return the next day and packs the magic stones he has. He finds a skill book and the system says he can't use it because he already knows the skill. He leaves the dungeon and places his obtained items in a basket. The people at the entrance are shocked by what Hyun-sung finds in the dungeon, and he asks if they have a problem with him. Hyun-sung goes to an office to sell the magic stones and skill books he retrieved from the Blood Fox dungeon. The man informs him that the magic stones cost 840,000 won and says they inform him where they have registered the skill books. Hyun-sung thanks the man and leaves the building as he says he should be able to make 1,000,000 won a day. Hyun-sung sits outside a dungeon as he eats and wonders if he should get a motel room somewhere that's closer to the dungeon. He gets up and says he will finally upgrade his title. He enters the dungeon and kills the blood foxes that attack him. Hyun-sung gets a notification as he runs and sees he has made an unbelievable achievement. The system rewards him with the title of Blood Fox Massacre for hunting 5,000 blood foxes by himself. It then shows that he is the first person to attain a heroic rank achievement, and he gets the title of First Heroic Achievement Attained. Hyun-sung realizes there are people who attained a rare achievement, but he is the first to achieve heroic achievement. He then says his ways of getting it were cheesy, but a good thing is a good thing. Hyun-sung opens his status window and is shocked as he sees that his total stats have increased by 100. He says the first ever title is amazing and sees he can grow to the legendary rank. He says he has had enough hunting for the day and decides to return the following day. 10 days passed and Hyun-sung steps out of the unmanned motel. He goes to the Blood Fox dungeon and continues killing blood foxes. Time passes as he kills the blood foxes, and the system informs him he has hunted 10,000 blood foxes on his own. He gets the first legendary rank achievement, and he sits as he is exhausted. Hyun-sung opens his status window and exclaims in shock as all his stats are increased by 40. It then says there is no more growth, and Hyun-sung wishes he got more out of it. He stands up and sheathes his sword as he says there are still plenty of hunting grounds where he can eat cheese. The chapter begins with Choi Hyun-sung fighting several horned rabbits as they attack him. He pushes a horned rabbit away and realizes he can use his bare hands to fight them. The horned rabbits continue to attack him, but he easily defeats them. Hyun-sung packs his things and decides to leave for the day. He returns to the motel he is staying in and receives a message from the player authentication house. The message informs him his skill book has been sold and he must receive the money directly because it is large. Hyun-sung picks up his phone and says he already has a reason to go to the auction house. He also realizes that he will receive a large sum of money. He goes to the auction house the following day and the receptionist asks him to confirm the amount and to sign on it. He sees that he is losing a lot of his money due to taxes and says they take a disgusting amount of money. Hyun-sung decides to stop selling skill books with points. He leaves the building as he says he needs to hunt diligently and says it isn't impossible for him to raise his monthly profit to 1 billion. Hyun-sung walks on the street and realizes he hasn't had time to buy new clothes since his father collapsed. He says he, his mother, and his sister haven't had time for themselves, and it ends today. Meanwhile, the alarm rings at 7 o'clock in a factory where Hyun-sung's mom works. The workers commend each other for their hard work, and she leaves the factory. Hyun-sung meets his mom and hugs her. She asks him what he is doing there, and he says he came to see her. Hyun-sung walks as he talks to his mom, and she asks if he has had dinner. He says he wants to eat with her, but she says she works at the restaurant. She gives him some money and asks him to have dinner, but Hyun-sung insists on following her. He tells her he has a reason for coming to see her and says he has awakened. The end. Thank you for watching. Check out these other videos and make sure to subscribe and tap the bell to be notified about our latest videos. See you next time.